All right, today we're stepping into the kitchen, the machine learning kitchen, that is. We're going to bake a prediction from scratch. And look, it might sound all high-tech and complicated, but I promise you, the basic recipe is something you already get. It's really just like baking a cake.
I mean, think about it for a second. What if you actually had a recipe that could tell you which customers were about to leave your service, or how much a brand new product was going to sell? That's the whole idea behind predictive modeling, and it all starts with one very simple concept.
And here it is. Making a prediction is pretty much the same as baking. You need your ingredients, that's all the information you have on hand, and you need to know exactly what kind of cake you're trying to make. That's the specific outcome you want to predict.
So here's our game plan. First, we'll cover the big idea, baking a prediction. Then we'll get into our data ingredients. After that, we'll put it all together with the master X to Y recipe. We'll even look at the two main kinds of cakes you can bake, and wrap up with why this whole recipe is just so powerful.
Okay, let's start with that core idea. For absolutely any prediction, just like any cake you've ever baked, it all boils down to two fundamental things. You've got your raw ingredients, and you have a really clear picture of what you want to end up with.
So let's talk about those ingredients. This is where it starts to get interesting. In machine learning, our ingredients are, well, data. And just like you wouldn't mix up flour and sprinkles, we have to understand that our data comes in different types, and each one has its own special job.
We can basically split our ingredients into two big mixing bowls. In one bowl, you've got your numerical ingredients. These are things you can actually measure, like a customer's income in dollars. It's like using measuring cups. In the other bowl, you have categorical ingredients. These are things you can sort into groups, like the city a customer lives in. That's more like choosing between chocolate or vanilla frosting. One is about how much, and the other is about which kind.
And we can break it down even further. On the numerical side, you've got continuous values. These can be pretty much any number on a spectrum, like someone's exact income or age. Then you have discrete values, which are specific whole number counts, like the exact number of times someone bought something. Over on the categorical side, you have nominal groups, where the order just doesn't matter, like New York versus London. But you also have ordinal groups, where the order is everything, like a review rating of bad, okay, good. You see, the order there is super important.
Okay, so we've got our ingredients all sorted out. But how do we actually organize them into a recipe that a machine can understand and follow? This is where we introduce the master recipe, the incredibly simple but powerful structure of X and Y.
First up are the X variables. Now, the official term is features, but for our purposes, just think of them as your ingredients. These are all the bits of information you already know. So if we're trying to predict customer behavior, our X variables would be things like their age, their location, their income. You get the picture. And if X represents the ingredients, then Y, well, Y is the finished cake. The Y variable is what we call our target. It's the single specific outcome we're trying to predict. It's the whole reason we're baking in the first place. For instance, will a customer churn? That answer, whether it's yes or no, that's our Y. That's our target.
So check out how this looks in the real world. Think of this table as a single customer's recipe card. Their income, their city, the number of months they've subscribed, those are our known ingredients, our X features. The one thing we're trying to figure out, churn, is our target Y. And for this particular customer, we can see the outcome was no.
Now this is a really crucial point, so let's lock it in. When you look at data laid out like this, each entire row is one complete observation. It's like one customer's whole story. And each individual column, like income or city, that represents one feature, a single ingredient in our recipe.
So we have our ingredients and we have our recipe structure. The big question now is, what kinds of cakes can we actually bake? It turns out that this simple X to Y recipe lets us create two main types of predictions, and they're quite different.
And this difference is super important. A regression cake is what you bake when your goal is to predict a number. You're asking, how much will this customer spend next month? The answer is going to be a numerical value. On the other hand, a classification cake is what you bake when you want to predict a category or a label. The question is different. Will this customer churn? The answer isn't a number, it's a choice, like yes or no.
Honestly, this quote from the source material just says it all. This is the entire philosophy wrapped up in one single sentence. You want to predict Y, what happens, using X, what you already know. It's that simple and that profound.
And for those of you who like to see the mechanics, this is what our recipe looks like as a formula. Our target, Y, is basically some function of all our features, all our X's. And that little F right there in the middle, that's our machine learning model.
It's the master chef in our kitchen that figures out the exact relationship between the ingredients and the final cake. So, why is this incredibly simple X to Y recipe so powerful? What's the big deal? Well, it's because this structure is the absolute bedrock of something called supervised machine learning, which is one of the most common and effective ways to make predictions today. Here's how it all works, in 3 simple steps. First, you start with a ton of historical data. Think of it as thousands of old recipe cards where you already know both the ingredients, the X's, and how the cake turned out, the Y's. Second, you feed all that data to a model, which trains by studying all those examples to learn the patterns. And finally, once the model has learned the recipe, you can give it a new set of ingredients, a brand new customer's data, and it will predict the final outcome for you.
All right, let's wrap this up with the key takeaways. Remember, your data is made of ingredients, which we call X features. You use those ingredients to predict a very specific outcome, your Y target. In a dataset, a single row is one observation, and a single column is one feature. And most importantly, this whole X to Y recipe is the fundamental building block of supervised learning.
So, there you have it. You now know the basic recipe for making a prediction. The real question is, what would you want to predict? Think about the data all around you, the ingredients you have access to. What kind of cake would you want to bake? Thanks for joining me for this explainer.